Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. And today we're diving into something that's honestly pretty massive, even if you aren't glued to the tech news every day.
Right. Yeah, this is one of those stories that I think has implications for just about everyone eventually,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Um, Basically, we're talking about a pretty big leap forward in the world of open source AI.
Hmm.
And specifically, this revolves around something called Tulu 3. It's a new family of AI models, and they were just released by the Allen Institute for AI, AI2 for short.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. They've been doing some really interesting work over there.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really caught everyone's attention with this Tulu 3 is the claim that it can actually compete performance-wise with the big AI players out there.
Oh, wow. So you mean like on par with like what, GPT and those kinds of models?
Yep, exactly, like Google's Gemini, all those big names.
Right.
But before we get too deep into Tulu 3 itself, maybe we should step back for a second.
Sure, yeah.
For anyone who might not be totally familiar with open source AI and why this is such a big deal.
Yeah, good point. I guess the simplest way to put it is that up until very recently, open source AI has kind of lagged behind in
Mhm.
terms of its capabilities compared to, what the big tech companies were putting out. Like, there was always this trade-off. You could go open source, but you'd be sacrificing some power, some
Right,
performance.
exactly, and that kind of held it back from widespread adoption, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about it. If you're a company and you need AI to do some heavy lifting, you're probably going to go with whatever's most effective, even if it's a closed system, right?
Yeah, it makes sense from a purely practical standpoint.
Yeah.
But then you run into all these other issues like, well, transparency for one.
Huge one, yeah. With open source, you know exactly what's going on under the hood. You can see the code, you can modify it. You're not just trusting some black box that a corporation gives you.
Right, and that ties into customization too, right?
Exactly. With open source, you're not just stuck with whatever features the company decided to include. You can tailor the AI to your specific needs, your specific data, all of that.
Okay, so we've got the transparency, the customization, but there's also this idea of avoiding, I guess, over-reliance on a handful of like giant tech companies.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of the appeal of open source in general, right? It's
Yeah.
about democratizing access to technology, not letting a few massive corporations control everything.
Okay, so that's the backdrop. We've got open source AI, huge potential, but has always kind of been playing catch up.
Hmm.
And now enter Tulu 3. And AI2 is making some pretty bold claims here, saying that it can basically go head to head with the big boys.
Yeah, that's a bold statement for sure. I'm really curious to see how that actually plays out in practice.
Me too. And one thing that I found really interesting about their approach is the emphasis they're putting on like real transparency.
Oh, yeah, that's refreshing to hear. Because, there are some companies out there, like you mentioned, Meta, Anthropic, they use the label open source, but then they have all these restrictions.
Yeah, exactly. It's like open source,
Yeah.
but with all these caveats and asterisks.
Right. So it's really good to see A2 taking such a strong stance on true open access. That could really build trust and encourage wider adoption, I think.
Okay, so let's get a little more into the nitty gritty of how Tulu 3 actually works.
All right, let's do it.
They keep talking about this idea of fine tuning, but I think for a lot of people, myself included, we hear that and it's kind of like, okay, what does that actually mean?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it can sound a little jargony for sure.
Yeah.
But the basic idea is actually pretty simple. Imagine you've got like a brilliant student, right? They're great at math, science, history, everything.
Uh-huh.
Fine tuning is like taking that student and giving them specialized training to become, say, a surgeon or a lawyer or an engineer. You're not starting from scratch. You're building on their existing knowledge and skills to make them even more effective in a specific area.
Okay, I see. So it's like taking this general AI capability and then shaping it for a specific purpose.
Exactly. And Tulu 3 is designed to make that fine-tuning process more efficient, more powerful, without losing any of the essential capabilities of the underlying model. So you can have your cake and eat it too, essentially.
Got it. And there's this one detail that really stood out to me when I was reading about Tulu 3.
Oh, what's that?
They're saying the developers can actually mix and match different types of data during the fine-tuning process. So instead of just specializing in, one thing, you could have an AI that can code like a pro, follow instructions like a personal assistant, and be fluent in multiple languages, like all at the same time.
Yeah. That's one of the most exciting things about this release, in my opinion. That level of flexibility opens up so many possibilities.
It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, just imagine the potential applications for businesses, for researchers, for, I don't know, individual creators even.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Let's say you're a small business owner, right? And you need an AI that can, I don't know, analyze your sales data, but also handle customer service inquiries in multiple languages. In the past, that would have been way too expensive, way too complex.
Right, like you'd need separate systems, separate everything.
Exactly. But with Tulu 3 and this idea of mixing and matching data during fine-tuning, suddenly that becomes a real possibility. And to make it even better, AI2 has actually released a bunch of infrastructure code to help businesses actually implement this stuff, which is huge.
Wow, so it's not just like a theoretical possibility. They're actually giving people the tools to make it happen.
Yep, exactly. They're really trying to lower the barrier to entry here, which is fantastic.
Okay, and then there's this other feature, the evaluation framework, I think they call it,
Hmm.
which I admit sounded a bit technical to me at first, but then when I dug into it, it's actually a really cool concept.
Yeah, explain it. Break it down for us.
So basically, it lets developers set very specific performance goals for their AI. Like
Hmm.
you could say, I need this AI to be able to identify fraudulent transactions with 95% accuracy. And then the framework helps them measure how well the AI is actually progressing towards that goal during the fine-tuning process.
So it's like a built-in way to make sure you're getting the results you need rather than just hoping for the best.
Exactly. And that level of control, I think, is going to be really appealing to a lot of people, especially those who might have been hesitant about using AI in the past because it felt too unpredictable.
Right, exactly. It makes the whole process much more transparent and manageable.
Okay, so if we kind of take a step back and look at the big picture here, what does Tulu 3 really mean for the future of AI, do you think?
Well, I think it has the potential to be a real game changer. Like we were saying before, open source AI has always had this promise, but it's often been held back by performance limitations.
Hmm.
If Tulu 3 can actually deliver on what AI 2 is claiming, then it could really level the playing field. Suddenly, powerful AI isn't just for big tech companies with massive budgets. It's something that smaller businesses, researchers, even individual creators can actually use and benefit from.
Right. And that could lead to a whole explosion of innovation and creativity. Who knows?
Exactly. It's really exciting to think about all the possibilities that could open up if this technology becomes truly accessible to everyone.
Yeah, and it really drives home the point that this isn't just about some technical upgrade. It's about who gets to use this technology and what they do with it.
Right. And I think that leads to a really important question that all of us need to be asking ourselves. What happens when powerful AI is within everyone's reach? What are the potential benefits? What are the potential risks? This isn't just a tech issue anymore. It's something that we all need to be thinking about and discussing.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So much to ponder, so much to explore. But that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Likewise. And thanks to everyone listening. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive.